Welcome to today's webinar on hiring your first general manager. I'm Mary Stennis-Wilborn, Outreach and Operations Coordinator for Food Co-op Initiative. We are proud to present this series of informational webinars for startup co-op organizers and their supporters. Food Co-op Initiative is a nonprofit organization providing support and resources to people organizing new food co-ops across the United States. Our work is supported by grants from the Blooming Prairie Foundation, USDA, National Cooperative Bank, National Cooperative Grocers Association, the Cooperative Foundation, the Cooperative Fund of New England, and by donations from co-ops and their members, people like you. And thanks, we couldn't do it without you. Food Co-op Initiative is here to help you get started down the right path and find the resources you need along the way. We've already helped 70 co-ops open new stores and are working with 120 more co-ops as they organize. If you are just getting started, please give us a call to introduce yourself and learn more about our resources. Be sure to check out our website at foodcoopinitiative.coop, where you can find contact information and sign up for our mailing list. You are invited to ask questions during the webinar by clicking on the YouTube logo at the bottom of the video. You will need a Google or YouTube login. Give it a try now and say hi by introducing yourself. Stuart Reid, our Executive Director, is also participating today and will be monitoring questions. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar, so please stick around. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available soon along with the slides from the webinar archives at www.foodcoopinitiative.coop and on the Food Co-op Initiative YouTube channel. There, you will also find an extensive library of previous webinars that will help guide you from start to finish. For next month's webinar, we are proud to present how to raise your first $10,000. It will air on Tuesday, December 6th at 1 p.m. Central Time. Registration will be available on our website. Today's presenter is Melanie Reid of CDS Consulting Co-op. Melanie has worked in natural food co-ops since 1996 and discovered her calling as a people developer and an advocate to small farmers, fair trade practices, and healthy food choices. For many years, she was the Human Resource Manager at Linden Hills Food Co-op in Minneapolis, and in 2004 joined the leadership team in the beginning phases of opening Just Food in Northfield, Minnesota. There, she was promoted to General Manager in 2008. She is now a member of CDS Consulting Co-op, where her areas of expertise include fostering organizational culture, improving human resource practices, and leadership development. Melanie has demonstrated a strong, long-standing passion for startups and is pleased to share the benefit of her experience with co-ops in all phases of their development. We hope you enjoy today's webinar, and please join us in welcoming Melanie Reid.
Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the webinar, and congratulations on getting to wherever you are in your startup process. We'll get started with the objectives of our webinar. Certainly we can't cover all the details of your hiring process in our short time together, but I hope to give you an overview of the work ahead and introduce you to some tools and resources that will be helpful along the way. And of course, I will answer some of your questions as well. First things first, the Hiring a General Manager Toolbox will probably become your new best friend and your constant companion. Order one today if you haven't already. The Toolbox is available through CGN or Cooperative Grocers Network, and the details will be given to you at the end of this presentation as to how you can get a hold of your own copy of this valuable resource. Some of the priorities that we're going to discuss during the webinar today will be to define the roles and responsibilities. And by this I mean the distinctions between the role of the full board and the role of the search committee. And those are going to be a little different throughout your process. So we're going to talk a bit about that. We're going to talk about the importance of forming a search committee. The search committee should be made up of 2 to 3 board members and potentially 1 to 2 at-large co-op community members as well. This is going to be a really key working group. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're also going to talk about documenting the process timeline. Now, the timeline may change along the way, but this document will help to keep the process on track as you move through the different phases. We'll also talk about determining qualifications. This is of utmost importance. Knowing what you're looking for in your candidates is essential to finding the right general manager for your co-op. And spreading the word. To be honest with you, candidates aren't always easy to find. And the wider you can spread your net, the more likely you will be to find what you're looking for in your candidates. So let's move on to talking about responsibilities of the board of directors. Determining qualifications, deciding the budget for the general manager's compensation, participating in interviews of the finalist candidates, and agreeing on the candidate and approving a final hiring decision, as well as giving the search committee some negotiating parameters when it comes to compensation, are all areas where the full board of directors will participate in the search process. All other aspects are going to be delegated to the search committee. The search committee, one of the search committee's roles will be to provide updates ongoing and throughout the process so that communication is maintained between the full board and the search committee at all times. So the search committee will have a variety of responsibilities, all very important. They will be responsible for creating tools, developing the interview questions, and managing the process timeline. They will recruit and screen candidates, as well as narrowing the candidate pool and offering a slate of candidates to the board from which to make that final selection. So this will include a couple of things. The first round of screening is typically done through a phone screening process. This process may be done by the committee chair of the search committee or by an outside consultant if you choose to work with an outside consultant on your process. And then there will be a second round of interviews that oftentimes end up being conducted via Skype because usually you attract candidates from outside of your own community. So those would be a couple of the kind of the screening process that the search committee would follow. One thing to keep in mind is that it's really important to keep your search committee to a reasonable size. We all know that the larger the group you're working with, the more difficult it is to schedule meetings. And this is a group that will need to be meeting on a very regular basis. So I recommend 2 to 3 board members and maybe 1 to 2 at-large community members on this committee. I would not go for larger than that. Keep in mind that there's a lot of other work to be done, so there should be plenty of other things for the rest of the board members to be working on at the same time. One really important role on the search committee is your committee chair. The committee chair is going to drive the process and maintain the momentum throughout. They're going to be placing the ads, they're going to be receiving and acknowledging resumes as they come in, and they're going to be either conducting or ensuring that the phone screening process takes place. Additionally, they'll be scheduling interviews either via Skype or in person, and they'll be working with your finalist candidates to make arrangements for them to visit your community. So, you know, there's lots of details, and this should be a well-organized person who has really good communication skills, as well as the drive to keep things moving forward. Sometimes the process takes somewhere in the vicinity of 6 months, so this person really needs to kind of keep up the momentum throughout. Now, I mentioned that you may choose to work with an outside consultant during your process. And there are many ways in which an outside consultant can be of assistance and support during your process. Now, these areas that I've listed for you here are the areas that I have found search committees typically need the most help. So when you're talking about defining the qualifications for your general manager, a consultant can also offer advice on recruiting resources, offer support with developing a timeline and budget. I mentioned that they may be able to conduct your phone screen interviews for you, help you with coming up with appropriate interview questions for the first and final round of interviews. That can be kind of a tricky piece of your process. It can certainly offer you some valuable input on candidate selection, help you with coming up with your compensation package and contract. And really, one of the important things that an outside consultant can do for you is to help that committee chair keep the process on track and provide them with ongoing support throughout the process. So they can have a pretty tricky job, and it's nice for them just to know that there's somebody out there that they can call to get support at any time when they need it. Certainly one last benefit is that engaging with an outside consultant allows you to get an expert's perspective on your candidates, and that can be really valuable, especially when you're in a situation where maybe you have 2 or 3 really strong candidates and you're having a difficult time deciding. So it's a consideration to think about hiring someone from the outside to help with your process. Now, I talked about how important the process of determining the qualifications for your general manager is to this hiring process. So let's talk about that. I want to point out that the Hiring a GM Toolbox includes really good examples and step-by-step instructions for engaging the full board in this important work. So I highly encourage you to use what is in the toolbox in terms of determining your qualifications. You're really going to use your qualifications as your guide throughout all stages of the process. So the attention that you give this work really pay off when you're making the final hiring decision, and really truly throughout the whole process. Now, I've talked a little bit about the various stages in terms of screening your candidates and narrowing your pool. So after each of those steps, you're going to turn back to your qualifications in order to consider who you're going to move forward. So for example, when I conduct phone screens for a group, I will maybe talk to 6 or 7 candidates. Once I've had all of those conversations, I'll pull out their qualifications worksheet and actually go through and score each of the people who I talk to. By doing so, I'm able to give them good recommendations on which of those candidates they should move forward to the next phase of their process. So you'll want to do the same thing after you conduct that first round of interviews, whether they're via Skype or in person. You'll really, truly will pull back your qualifications grid and score each of those candidates. This will really help you decide which are the very best candidates that you're going to send forward to meet in person with your full board and be considered for the position. So really, really, really key, very important to include everybody in determining what these qualifications are going to be. I want to talk about compensation. Now, compensation is obviously very important, and you really want to start thinking about compensation early in the process. I really do not recommend waiting until you have found your best candidate and you're ready to offer that person a job before you start thinking about what you might offer them for compensation. So what you might want to do is delegate the work of kind of studying compensation or gathering some information about compensation to a couple of people on your hiring committee. Now, there are several factors that you'll want to consider. Certainly one factor is what other co-ops are paying, and you'll want to look at co-ops that are in a similar size range to the size that you're hoping to open at once you get your doors open. You'll want to look at what your local labor market is paying. You'll want to know what your candidate pool is seeking. So as you start to review cover letters, what are your candidates asking for? What are they hoping for in terms of a compensation package? And certainly, and probably most importantly, what does your budget allow? What does it say on your pro forma in terms of what you'll be offering? So there are a few available resources that you can use to gather some of this information as you're thinking about this. Online, you can use the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, and that'll help you find information for your region. And sometimes it's difficult to find an exact match. You're probably not going to go in there and find co-op general manager, but you can certainly dig around and find some good information that will guide your decision. The State Department of Employment Security is another one you can turn to, and there are also some really helpful online cost of living comparison tools that you can look at. And lastly, if you do choose to work with CDS Consulting, we have access to a general manager compensation database, and we can actually provide some really helpful information and guidance in terms of what general managers in similar sized co-ops are being paid, and that can be really helpful to have that information in your hands. Beyond base salary, there are other things to consider. Certain benefits are really kind of expected in a candidate at this level. So I recommend a minimum of 3 weeks of paid time off as part of an initial package. I also suggest strongly considering medical insurance as well as some type of retirement savings option. And there are a variety of things you can choose from there. Other benefits are certainly going to come with time, and it will be part of the general manager's job to figure out what the benefit package is going to look like once you get a little bit further down the road in your process and you're getting ready to hire your staff. Your GM will develop further that package, and of course they'll be able to participate in some of those benefits that get added at that time, but this is just kind of a basic starting point. As far as performance bonus, I really suggest waiting on a performance bonus until year 2 or even maybe year 3, kind of depending on how the financials of the co-op are doing at that time. There's just so many factors that are really hard to control in that first year that it really just doesn't make sense to start out with that right away. I do, however, recommend some type of a relocation bonus. This can be really helpful for people who are finalists who are coming in from out of town and looking at the expense of moving. And there are certainly some tools online that you can use to determine what a reasonable amount for a relocation bonus might be. So I would highly encourage you to think about that. And then lastly, don't underestimate the importance of the intangible benefits. Many people who work in the cooperative sector are driven by these intangibles. A lot of times people will say, well, you know, I'm really not motivated by money. So looking at things and thinking about, you know, career advancement opportunities and autonomy. So if I'm, say, a store manager at a fairly good-sized co-op, I might be ready to take that next career step, and I might be feeling like I'm interested in a little bit more autonomy. I kind of want to run my own show. So being a general manager of a startup might be a really great next step in my career. There's also the community aspect. And, you know, I mean, you're all opening a new food co-op, so you feel it, you understand how important that is and the really positive impact that this food co-op is going to have in your community. So being a part of that can be really exciting for people when they're thinking about the next step in their career. So that's a good thing. And also just the challenge of it. It is really challenging, and it's also really, really rewarding. So those kinds of things are really important to a lot of people working in the cooperative sector. Now, lastly, I want to mention something that sometimes people don't think about, and it is really very important, and that is the importance of the board general manager relationship. And just to remember that that relationship really starts during the hiring process. So when people are coming in to meet with your board and thinking about whether or not they might want to work for your board, make sure that, you know, you're doing all the things right. You're speaking with one voice, you're getting along, you're, you know, relatively well organized, and that, you know, you're you're starting that important board general manager relationship off right, even during the recruiting process. You know, I really think that the whole hiring process is really a two-way decision. So not only are you interviewing people and trying to decide who might be the best fit for your organization, but bear in mind that your candidates are probably interviewing with more than one organization, and they're also trying to decide which organization is going to be the best fit for them. So really, they're interviewing you just as much as you are interviewing them. So that's important to keep in mind. Now, let's jump to recruitment and talk about where you might find the talent that you're looking for. I can't stress enough the importance of really showcasing your community during your hiring process. You know, I think it's really important to let people know why your town is awesome and why they would want to move there and be the general manager of your brand new co-op. I'm sure that every community has lots of great things, and you really need to talk about that. The other thing that's really important is to spread a really wide net. You really just don't have any idea where your general manager is going to come from. So spread the word far and wide, and really use all your networks. Reach out to anyone and everyone to help you spread the word. With social media use, you can spread the word really, really, really quickly and to a really wide audience without too much trouble at all. So really take advantage of all those networks that you're connected into. Specifically, some places where you might want to advertise. Certainly the Cooperative Grocer Network, both the website and the magazine, are probably your best resource in terms of where you want to advertise. Many people who are looking for jobs or careers in the cooperative industry turn to the Cooperative Grocer Network for job postings and job information. Certainly your co-op's website, you're going to, of course, want to advertise on your own website, and certainly you'll want to direct people to your website from other sources where they might find your postings, so directing them to learn more about the position on your website. That also gives them a chance to kind of explore your co-op and your community at the same time, so that's definitely a must. Also, depending on the timing, the CCMA conference that happens every year in June is a super great place to network and find candidates. So I would encourage you to, you know, make some signs or fly some flags while you're participating in CCMA and see if you can't drum up some interest in your co-op that way. Also, there are a variety of online job boards that you might try. NCBA CLUSA has an online job board that's going to be specific to the co-op industry. And then, of course, there are job boards such as Good Food Jobs, Careers in Grocery, Indeed, and even some people even use Craigslist. Now, any of those online job boards certainly have varying results in different communities. I have noticed that in some areas, things like Craigslist work really, really well, but in other areas, you end up getting a whole lot of resumes that are not really very relevant to your position. So use your best judgment. You can also use regional publications. One of my favorites is the Edible publications. Those are throughout the country. That's a really great place, good audience. And as I mentioned, your social media networks are going to be a really great place for getting the word out. So those are just some ideas. I'm sure that you'll come up with some other ones. Again, use all the possibilities because you just never know where your general manager is going to come from. I'll leave you with a few things to keep in mind as you go through your hiring process. Hiring your first general manager is going to be one of the most important decisions that your board is going to make. This is going to be a major milestone in the process of opening your co-op. The hiring process might take 6 to 9 months, so be patient and be willing to wait until you're certain that you found the right person. Your general manager is definitely out there. It just might take a little while to find him or her and to guide them to your store. A search committee is essential. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of other work that the board will need to accomplish while the GM is being hired. So no one is going to be left out of the process. Everyone will participate at some level, but keep your search committee to a reasonable size so that you can actually get the work done in a timely manner. And then lastly, the board, you need to be preparing yourselves for shifting the responsibilities to your general manager once they are hired. So it's really important part of the process to be ready to hand over operations to your new GM, and for the board to be prepared to shift gears a little bit and be a really good employer for your one employee, your general manager, and then additionally be readying yourself to utilize policy governance to provide guidelines and ensure accountability for your organization. I want to leave you with a few resources. I promised that I would give you the information on obtaining the Hiring and General Manager Toolbox, which is available through cgn.coop. And if you haven't already, I would encourage you to order your toolbox today. And then there are some additional webinars and recorded workshops that you might want to watch as well. Those are available through the CDS Consulting Co-op website, and some information provided there for that. So thank you so much for attending and for listening, and do feel free to contact me anytime for further information or support with your process. And best of luck to you in finding your first general manager.
Thanks, Melanie. That was great. We have time for some questions, and so be sure to post them on the YouTube comments bar, and we'll get those to Melanie. First one is, if we can't find somebody from a food co-op to hire, should we look at people from retail or grocery stores?
Yes, absolutely. It is not essential that you hire a general manager who comes from another co-op. Certainly it's nice, and there are some advantages, but there are a lot of great people out there working in conventional grocery stores and even working in more just general retail environments that have great experience and would make terrific general managers for you. So yeah, definitely keep your options open.
Okay, we're looking for some more questions, folks. There's plenty of room. Coming in a little slow today. It's not like co-op people not to have questions. Well, I guess if that's the way you're going to be, we may have to call it a day. As always, we will try to answer questions that we don't get to that may come in later, and post those to our website, and you will be able to see this presentation in a recorded form shortly. It'll be posted as well. Mary, anything to finish us up with? Nope, I might have caught Mary off guard. Well, thanks everybody for coming. As you can see up on the screen now, our next webinar is on Tuesday, December 12th. How to raise your first $10,000, and I'll be doing that with some help from Mary. This is Stuart Reid saying thanks once again for Food Co-op Initiative.